Hey friends, in this video I want to talk about what it looks like to be a love addict.
The love addict's mind is characterized by fear. Fear of being left, but also fear of being enmeshed. A love addict will tolerate almost anything to avoid being left. The sad part is that love addicts didn't experience enough intimacy to know how to be intimate in a healthy way. So on one hand, they're afraid to be left, and on the other, healthy intimacy scares them. Every love addict has to face their own fears. The fear of overcoming one's own sense of powerlessness and rising above their patterns in order to find the love that will actually heal them. A love that they're deeply afraid of.
I want to start with the fact that a lot of the symptoms of love addiction stem from an original abandonment experience by the caregiver. That's honestly really scary for a child to, look for love, look for affirmation and validation in the world and not being able to find that. Because when a child is appropriately cared for, it sends the message, you are loved, you are worthy, you're important, you matter. As a child, I would literally hold my breath until I almost passed out because I was channeling such intense rage and sadness. And Pia Melody actually even mentions this specific experience. In counseling, they often describe that child fear as a sense of not being able to breathe, as a sense of having a loss of their own breath. And it feels to them as if they are actually dying. And what this abandonment experience teaches love addicts as children is that to help them feel like they're living, they are worth something, the answer in their life is in relationships. When I was able to forget everything and escape to phone calls with my secret boyfriend, that was my escape. And so this fantasy of a rescuer is born. You may not be somebody who consciously thought, oh my gosh, I need somebody to rescue me. For myself, that definitely was not the case because another symptom, another characteristic is an unrealistic view of reality. So on one hand, I saw myself as somebody that was very independent. I completely denied all of the evidence that pointed otherwise. I remember having the thought that I wanted to marry somebody so that they could stand up to my family for me. I remember thinking, my family never gets it, they never understand me, and when I get married, I'll have somebody on my side to protect me, to help me feel understood, to serve as a sort of mediator, somebody who stood in the gap and that would advocate for me. And the older I got, I realized that I had to serve that role for myself and that it was not only unrealistic, but unfair to expect my future partner to serve an essential role like that in my life. Regardless of whether or not you thought to yourself, man, I just need somebody to save me. It's not acceptable. It's not admirable to think in that way. Even though in media, we still see that oftentimes the woman is saved. It is something that is compounded in society that women are powerless. Even if on the forefront in your mind, you feel like you're a strong, independent woman, you need to look at your actions and see what is happening when I get into a relationship. Another big indicator that Pia Melody talks about is that you neglect to care for yourself in a relationship. So a lot of women, they might be just fine when they're single and they're by themselves. And the true test is when they get into a relationship, do they suddenly start expecting their partner to take care of them, to love on them constantly, to never question them? A love addict wants to heal that wound that they experienced as a child. That's why they have an expectation for their partner to always have what Pia Melody calls unconditional positive regard. So if we break that down, unconditional, it means that they're supposed to love you no matter what. In order to love you, they have to see you positively. If they call you out on something, you might get overly offended. Like, they can never question your decisions. It's kind of like that old saying where people are like, oh, the wife is always right. I realized I've never seen my parents solve conflict in a healthy way. Oftentimes it was my father just giving in to my mother, saying, you know what, you're right, you win. Even if my mom is not right, that's how I learned I should always be right. Ultimately, what that love addict is trying to heal in their life is low self-esteem. They grew up their entire lives feeling like I'm not worthy of being loved, so now they expect their partner to love on them. And maybe initially this seems like a sweet thing, it seems cute. The dark side is that ultimately addiction is a sickness of not being able to face reality. When you're addicted to something, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm escaping from? What reality is intolerable to me? Part of the reality of the love addict is that they are not perfect and that you don't have to be perfect to be loved. So a partner that challenges that and calls that out might trigger a very intense reaction where they feel that abandonment flaring up again. Another indicator is that love addicts may feel very intensely in a relationship, but those feelings are not of love. For myself, it usually felt like inadequacy, very intense jealousy. It felt like anger because this was a person that I usually put on a pedestal. If they didn't meet my expectations, then they became somebody I was resentful of. What the love addict does, they try to manipulate this person to become the person on that pedestal that can save them. We have the childhood abandonment experience, which then leads to low self-esteem. That child grows up believing that they're not worthy of love. Then they seek to heal that wound by being in relationships where that person gives them unconditional positive regard. And the love addict also simultaneously assigns that person power, so they become someone in their mind that can save them. So if you're wondering if you're a love addict, I would pay attention to those experiences, to those patterns, and keep in mind that love addicts experience a lot of denial about that addiction. When they can acknowledge that they experience these symptoms, that's when true healing can begin to take place.